The shore of surrender. The Adriatic coast held a special kind of silence for Vince Scaletta. It wasn't the absence of sound, the waves still crashed, the gulls still cried, but an absence of consequence. Here, in his family's ancestral villa perched on the white cliffs of Polignano, Amar, he was not the Re della Notte, the king of the night who ruled the Neapolitan underworld with an iron will and a chilling pragmatism. Here, he was just a man with a heavy soul, watching the horizon bleed from sapphire to bruised violet as another empty day died. He came to the private cove at dusk, a ritual of purification. The salt air was supposed to scour the residual grit of the city from his lungs, the scent of fear, cheap cigars and spilled blood. He'd walk the crescent of pale sand, his polished leather shoes an absurdity against the primal shore, his hands that had signed death, warrants and comforted grieving, mothers buried in the pockets of his tailored linen trousers. And then he saw her. She was a silhouette against the molten gold of the setting sun, a stark, slender figure at the water's edge, standing perfectly still as the foam licked her bare feet. She was not of this place, not of his world. She wore a simple, pale blue sundress that the sea breeze pressed against her legs, and her hair, the color of dark honey, streamed in a wild tangle down her back. She was looking out to sea, that her posture spoke not of appreciation, but of a profound, consuming loss. She looked shipwrecked. Every instinct in Vince's body, honed by a lifetime of assessing threats and opportunities, should have dismissed her. A tourist, a lost romantic, a problem to be avoided. But his heart, a muscle he thought had atrophied from disuse, gave a single painful thud against his ribs. It was a sound he felt in his teeth. He watched, unmoving, as a wave larger than the rest rushed in, swirling around her calves, causing her to stumble slightly. A soft cry, carried by the wind, reached him. It was a sound of pure despair. Without conscious thought, his body moved. The Don, the strategist, vanished. Only the man remained. He was beside her in moments, his hand closing gently but firmly around her elbow, steadying her. "Signorina," his voice was rough, unused to gentleness. "The current here is deceptive. It's not safe." She turned to look at him, and the world ceased its spin. Her eyes were the color of a stormy sea, grey-green and churning with a pain so deep it stole his breath. Tears had carved clean paths through the salt dust on her cheeks. She was beautiful, not in the polished, calculated way of the women who sought his attention in Naples, but in a way that was elemental and fractured. A masterpiece left in the rain. "Safe," she echoed, the word a hollow whisper. "I don't think I remember what that feels like." She didn't pull her arm away. Her skin was cold under his palm. He knew in that instant that he would kill to warm her. The violence of the thought, its immediacy, shocked him. "My name is Vince," he said, releasing her elbow but not stepping back. The offering of his real name, not an alias, not a title, was a vulnerability he had not permitted in a decade. "Chiara," she murmured. I'm lost. I can see that," he said, his gaze drinking in the profound disorientation in her eyes. "Where is your hotel?" A sad, broken little laugh escaped her. "I don't have one. I had a ticket to Bari. I got off the train here on a whim. My suitcase is somewhere. I think I left it on the platform." She looked back at the sea. "My fiancé. He was supposed to meet me in Bari for our wedding. I found messages on his phone this morning. He's not coming. He's with someone else. So I just walked." The raw, unfiltered confession, given to a complete stranger, spoke of a pain so great it had obliterated all caution. Vince felt a fury, hot and immediate, towards this phantom man. He wanted to find him, to explain in brutal detail the error of his ways. But more than that, he felt a surge of something more terrifying. A need to protect, to shelter. "Kiara," he said, and her name on his tongue felt like a vow. "You cannot stay here. The night is cold, and this coast has no mercy for the heartbroken." He made a decision that defied all his laws. "My home is just there on the cliff. You will come with me. You will be safe. I give you my word." He expected fear, refusal, but she just looked at him with those shipwrecked eyes, as if his commanding presence was the first solid thing she had encountered in a swirling sea. Slowly she nodded. The villa was a testament to quiet, ancient wealth. It was not ostentatious, but solid, with thick walls that held the day's warmth, terracotta floors, and windows that framed the sea like living paintings. His housekeeper, the formidable Signora Rosa, raised a single, eloquent eyebrow at the sight of Vince leading a damp, distraught stranger into the hall, but said nothing. A guest room was prepared. He gave her space. He had her lost suitcase retrieved from the station by a discreet man who asked no questions. He left a simple dinner of bread, olives, and fresh fish outside her door. He was a predator who knew the value of stillness, of not frightening wounded prey. The next morning, he found her on the east terrace, wrapped in a borrowed cashmere shawl, watching the dawn. She looked pale, fragile, but the raw torment in her eyes had softened to a deep, weary sadness. "Thank you," she said, without turning, "for not being what you could have been." A different man would have taken advantage. He came to stand beside her, leaning on the stone balustrade. The sunrise painted her profile in gold and rose. "I am that different man, Kiara," he admitted, the truth a bitter stone in his throat. "But not with you. Never with you." She turned then, studying him, the sharp, aristocratic planes of his face, the shadows in his dark eyes that spoke of long nights and hard choices, the controlled power in his stance. "Who are you, Vince?" "A man who is tired of the dark," he answered, which was both an evasion and the deepest truth he'd spoken in years. Days bled into a week. A fragile, miraculous routine emerged. They shared silent breakfasts on the terrace. He'd work in his study, making calls in low, sharp Italian, the language of his other life. She'd wander the cliffside gardens, sketching in a pad she'd found, or simply sit reading. In the afternoons, they walked the cove. He stopped wearing his polished shoes, going barefoot in the sand like a boy. He learned about her that she was a conservator from London, that she restored damaged paintings, that she believed in finding beauty in broken things. She learned only what he allowed her to see: a businessman with complicated interests, a lonely man seeking solace. But the real conversation happened in the spaces between words. In the way he'd hand her a cup of tea, his fingers deliberately brushing hers, sending a jolt through them both. In the way her stormy eyes would find his across the room, holding a gaze that grew longer, heavier, more charged with each passing hour. The air between them thickened, becoming a tangible thing, sweet and suffocating with unmet desire. The storm broke on the 7th night. A true tempest rolled in from the sea, lightning fracturing the sky, thunder shaking the ancient villa's bones. He found her not in her room, but in the great hall, standing before the towering window, watching the chaos, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "It's magnificent," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain lashing the glass. "It matches the one inside me." He moved to stand behind her, so close he could feel the heat radiating from her body, could smell the faint scent of jasmine from her skin mixed with the ozone of the storm. He did not touch her. The tension was a live wire. "Let me quiet the storm inside you, Kiara," he murmured, his voice a dark velvet rumble against her ear. She shuddered, leaning back infinitesimally, until her shoulders barely touched his chest. It was an invitation, a surrender. He turned her then, slowly, his hands coming up to cradle her face. In the strobe light of the lightning, Her face was a masterpiece of fear and yearning. "I am not a good man," he warned her, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "My world is one of shadows and sin. You are light. Being near me will stain you." Tears welled in her sea-storm eyes. "My light is gone, Vince. All I feel is you. You are the only solid ground I have." It was the permission he both craved and dreaded. With a groan that was torn from the depths of his soul, he captured her mouth with his. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a claiming, a conflagration. It was the release of 7 days of agonizing restraint. He poured every ounce of his forbidden longing, his savage tenderness, his desperate love into it. His arms banded around her, crushing her to him, as if he could fuse their broken pieces together through sheer force of need. She responded with a wildness that mirrored his own, her fingers tangling in the dark silk of his hair, her body arching into his, a soft moan lost in the thunder's roar. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her not to a guest room, but to his own, to the chamber that had known only his solitary haunted sleep. He laid her on the dark sheets, his gaze worshipful and hungry. "You are the most beautiful thing to ever enter my life," he said, his voice ragged, "and the most terrifying. I would burn cities for you. I would ruin myself for you, then ruin us both," she breathed, pulling him down. He made love to her with an intensity that bordered on reverence. He was a man used to taking, but with her, he gave. He gave every shattered piece of his guarded heart. He mapped her body with his hands and mouth, like a pilgrim at a shrine, learning the secret places that made her gasp, whispering adorations in Italian against her skin asterisk, "Mia anima, mia vita, mio soul, asterisk my soul, my life, my sun." When they joined, it was with a sense of destiny so profound it felt like breaking and healing all at once. He moved within her, his eyes locked on hers, and in that storm-lashed room, with the world raging outside, they created a perfect, silent peace within. Her climax was a sob of release, her nails scoring his back, marking him as hers. His followed, a roar swallowed by thunder, as he spilled his essence and his soul into her, a man baptized not in holy water, but in the sweat and salt of a sacred, desperate love. Afterward, in the tangled silence, with her head on his chest, he knew. The truth could no longer be hidden. "Chiara," he whispered into her hair, "the men who work for me, they are not simply assistants. The calls I make, they are not about business mergers." She went still, but did not pull away. She listened as he told her, in stark, unvarnished terms, of the world he ruled, of the violence, the obligations, the inescapable blood on his hands. When he finished, the silence was heavier than the storm had been. She lifted her head, her stormy eyes searching his. She saw the fear there, not of death, but of losing her. She saw the brutal honesty, and the love that was more terrifying than any truth. Slowly, she placed her palm flat over his heart. "This," she said softly, "this is the only truth that matters to me now. The man who found me on the shore. The man who quieted my storm." She kissed him, a soft, sealing promise. "Your world is shadows. Then I will be your light. But don't you dare try to send me away." Tears, unfamiliar and hot, pricked Vince Scaletta's eyes. The Riedella Knot, the untouchable king, was brought to his knees by love. He held her, this lost lady who had found him, and knew he would spend the rest of his life, however long or short it might be, defending this miracle. He had come to the shore to escape his life, and instead he had found his soul, and he would sooner see the entire Adriatic run red with blood than ever let her go.